Hey guys, Cameron here with Emerson Property Management. Every week I bring you tools, tactics, strategies, lessons I've learned, things that have helped me build up a sizable rental portfolio in about 2 years and now manage that portfolio. Today, guys, I want to talk about maintenance. So the number one reason tenants leave, per the national research and data and surveys, is maintenance. So I want to talk through our maintenance process in this video, some things that you can do to do preventative maintenance, how we catch things in our maintenance process so that they don't become bigger problems. So I'm going to walk through that in this video. It won't be very long, and I'll talk a little bit about our KPIs on what we're tracking for maintenance and what you can as well, whether you have one door or 1,000. These are some of the KPIs that we track. You might want to track them. It wouldn't be that hard if you have only a couple doors. Before I get into that, if you guys like this, find this valuable, please share it with somebody. I don't want to do it out of pity or sympathy, but like, subscribe if you find value in this. If you don't or have any feedback, let me know below. So here's how we start on my handy dandy whiteboard. Okay, so proper maintenance. Again, like I said, the main reason residents leave, the number one reason residents leave is maintenance. So that's the first thing we want to take care of. Also, if you don't take care of maintenance and these problems become big, they can become huge expenses. A little water leak underneath a sink trap has cost me thousands and thousands of dollars on one of my own properties. I had to redo all the subfloor on a pier and beam home. So this is something you want to take seriously. So here's a couple of the things that we do to make sure that we're catching some of these things. First one, MIMO, fancy word for move in, move out. So we do move in and move out inspection. So before the tenant gets in the property, we see the whole condition. We get like 200 or 300 pictures. And then we do the same thing when a resident moves out. So we can say, how is this property deteriorated, right? And again, we want to keep residents in the property as long as possible. Tenant turnover, it's an expense that you want to kick down the road as long as you can. If you have a good paying tenant and they're taking care of the property, you want to keep them in there as long as possible. So we'll do move in and move out inspections so we can assess what it looks like when they moved in, and then what it moved out like when it moved out. If there's any water down, oh my gosh, look at this drywall here. There's something going on. You hit it with a thermal and you notice there's a leak behind the wall, but it was a small leak and now it's a big problem. So move in and move out inspections. We also do annual inspections. So I've talked about this a few times. We used to do one at the 3-month mark and 9-month mark. Now we just do one inspection right before renewal about the 9-month mark, 8 to 9 month mark. So before we offer the renewal to a tenant, we want to go in and inspect the property. And that gives us the best condition and best idea of the condition of the property before we offer a renewal. The third thing, and these are in no particular order, right? The other thing is we have a 24/7 or 24-hour maintenance portal or tenant portal where they can go in and put maintenance requests. And we also have a 24-hour emergency line. So there's no reason when we get a tenant in, we talk to them about this. Here is your maintenance portal. This is available 24/7. There are people monitoring it all the time. So if you think something's going on and there might be a leak, but it's 7 or 8 o'clock at night. You need to put it in the system. We tell tenants that, right? Also, if it's an emergency, like there's a fire or there is water, usually the big emergency is water, right? Oh my God, one of the pipes burst and there's water coming through the ceiling. We have a 24-hour emergency line. These are not expensive, right? We pay like $100 and some for the emergency line. Obviously, your tenant portal is probably with your property management software. So if you only have one property or two, it's probably hard to do that. Maybe you want to be on call or pay someone to be on call 24/7. But this will eliminate, I can tell you right now, having this will eliminate residents from going in and doing inspections or from not putting in maintenance that they don't think is a big deal. This will prevent them from doing that. They can't say, well, I couldn't get a hold of you. We have everything documented. It's all time-stamped. Or they say, and this has come up time and time again, and I get it, and maybe they think that's true. I put this in on Friday and you didn't get to it till next Friday. Well, when you have a system like this, you can see exactly when they called in, and then for our maintenance system, you can see when they call or when they put in the request, when it was dispatched, who responded, everything's timestamped. It also keeps you out of litigation if there would ever be one where, it comes up like you didn't respond to this per the property code, which is within 7 days. So that's another thing that comes up and it keeps a lot of people out of trouble. The last two, tenant surveys. So automatically in our system, after we do any sort of maintenance, we have a tenant survey. We use the same handful of vendors, right? We have about a half a dozen vendors that we use for almost everything. But sometimes they screw up, just like every vendor, right? And especially if you're using new vendors, or you're getting into this, you have one or maybe two properties, and you really don't have a dedicated maintenance person for you to handle all your stuff. How are they doing? Have you ever had the tenant put in something and then all of a sudden come back to it a week later or 3 days later, like, hey, this is still broken, and you got the invoice from the vendor and you thought it was all fixed. You're like, hey, dude, you need to go back out and fix this. So by automatically in our system sending a tenant survey, we get a total clear perception of how professional the vendor was, whether they handled it in a timely manner, whether they actually fixed it. This has come up before where we have a vendor who goes in, they said it's done and it's not. So we want to make sure that those surveys go out. And this could be, again, our software does this automatically. If you do it, you could just text somebody and say, hey, how did everything go? How was that vendor? Especially if you're doing one maintenance request a month or every quarter, you can just text the tenant. Just make sure that they have everything good. It doesn't have to be a very fancy survey. You can just literally text them. But that keeps the vendors in check. And the last thing you want to do is have trusted vendors. So you want to make sure you use guys and gals that are experts. If you're using them for license work, I know I did it before. I didn't want to pay a licensed person because it was more expensive, but I can tell you from experience that licensed people doing licensed work is a necessity, because if something happens, plumbing, electrical, I know I don't mean to fearmonger, but if a house burns down and you use somebody that was a handyman to do some electrical work, you might get in fault with it. I don't know if insurance is going to cover that. Thank God I have never had to go there, but I've had to do this with sewer lines and sue contractors because I hired a plumber that wasn't a plumber to do a sewer line job. So use trusted vendors. You might pay a little more, but it's almost like insurance, right? You're paying a little bit more, you're paying an extra premium so that if something does come up, you can make it right. And I'm not saying that everything's going to be more expensive with trusted people, but I have very good trusted people that I've used for almost a decade that are cheap, but they're trusted. We use licensed people for licensed work. So with all these things, doing inspections, being available to take maintenance requests, and then having some sort of survey or follow up to the tenant to make sure it was done properly, and then using trusted vendors, that should keep your maintenance in check. And then those are some of the things you can do. The KPIs to measure this. So how effective is this, Cameron, you might ask? So there's two main KPI measures that we have. One is resident satisfaction from our resident surveys. So that's out of 5, right? 5 stars is the best, 1 is the worst. We post a 4.7 out of 5 all time. We monitor that on a weekly basis. So that's one of our weekly KPIs. We say, hey, because we handle about 5 to 10 maintenance requests a week. So we say, okay, how are we doing? How are these vendors doing? And in our system, if Cameron goes in to do a job, or vendor 1, and they get stars, it sticks with that vendor, and we see all our vendors plotted. So obviously our core vendors all have 5 stars, or 4.7, 4.8, 4.9. And then the vendors we end up getting rid of, we start seeing they have a 1 star, they have a 2 star. And again, this doesn't have to be a very fancy system. If you just have 1 or 2 properties, you could just text and follow up, and they're like, the guy was an asshole. He used, God, I've heard this before, used his muddy boots and stood on my daughter's bed to fix a vent. It's like, some guys just aren't very respectful, or they don't get it, and you have to get rid of them. So the tenant survey is 1. Our goal is a 4.6 or above. All time we post a 4.7, and we monitor that every single week. The second KPI that we have is time to completion. So from the time the maintenance request comes in until the time and we troubleshoot, we dispatch a vendor, the vendor goes out and fixes it and marks it complete. We want that to be done in 4 days. So if they submit it on a Monday, if tenant comes in on Monday morning, we want that thing done, everything in the system, and done and completed, dispatched, coordinated with the tenant, everything marked done by Thursday. So right now, I can tell you we're averaging a 5.6, or we have a 5.6 right now. So we obviously are working right now to get that worked down, but that's our goal, is 4. So 4.7 out of 5 on your resident surveys, or that's what we do. and then 4 days for our median speed of repair or average speed of repair to make sure that we're getting these taken care of quickly. And we're averaging, what I say, just over 5 for that right now. So I hope that was helpful. And again, these sound very fancy. It sounds like a big system. Like, obviously we have a lot of systems. We manage almost 150 properties at the time of this recording. So we have to have systems. We have the data to back some of this up. But if you just have 1 or 2 properties, you can monitor this stuff. This is a good way to keep track of your maintenance. And again, good tenants that pay on time, you don't want to lose them because you didn't want to send somebody out for 75 or 125 bucks to fix something minor. Or that you did send the vendor out and they're not fixing it. So you have to go back and back and back and back and back. And you don't have any way to track it because you're just sending off a text and you're not saying anything. You're not following up with the tenant. So I hope that was helpful. Again, these are the things we do. This has helped us achieve pretty good numbers, keep our maintenance in line. And I hope this will help you guys no matter whether you have 1 property or 100. These are the same still principles we would use. So I'll see y'all next week. Thanks for tuning in.